Doesn't go live.
There we go.
And we are alive.
Right.
So, good afternoon, everybody. I am Sean Lardo, evangelist for the economy here at ConnectWise. I'm with my good friend from the land down under, Paul McNeil, formerly of, well, Y-Sync, which you can see in the top right corner, but now part of the ConnectWise family. Paul, good evening, good morning, good afternoon. I'm not sure. What is it?
It's 5 a.m. So it's definitely early morning here in Australia. But we're in the future, so we can see the calamities unfolding in the future as you sit there in the past. But
That is amazing. That is amazing. So I live in Pittsburgh. The PA lottery will be taking place. Could you possibly send me what's going to happen?
yeah, as long as we can cut it in half, all right. Like it's got
That
to be a share arrangement.
Listen, I have no problem with sharing with you at that point because I'm going to go big. So, thanks for getting on with me, getting on with us for this today. It's a pretty turbulent time. We wanted to hurry and throw this together for people to start sharing some information because we've seen some pretty big things occur within the banking industry, right? And yes, we know that the government and everything, they've taken some steps to secure information, secure the money, but it just really goes to show you that we are at any moment on a cusp of what could be detrimental to your business, right?
Absolutely. I think if you take a step back and look at the underlying economic situation, it's obviously there's a lot of turbulence. So all it takes is like one little moment in time where there's some uncertainty around a current situation, such as SVB or FTX, even for example. It
Hmm.
starts with people having uncertainty around their money in bank, and that's where the run started. It was, there was some calls made early on by some of the venture fund backed organizations. SVB is traditionally a an organization or a bank that's used by the tech industry and someone in the industry who's normally funded via venture capital firms out of
Yes.
Silicon Valley would have been banking through SVB. They were the go-to, the darling of Silicon Valley.
Hmm.
And to sort of kind of rewind back to what happened, they just basically not diversified their investments. They were stuck in these low yield interest bonds, and when they had to start selling those at a loss, it creates a situation where you're like, how does a bank support the cash flow it needs to drive simply the deposits that are going to be required? And then as soon as that uncertainty evolved into, I need to get my money out, and then that perpetuated into thousands and hundreds of thousands of people saying, I need to get my money out. It then became an impossible situation for the bank where they just didn't have the capital reserves in their deposits to be able to fulfill the money that was leaving their accounts. And that was something that I woke up to on Saturday morning and was like, "Whoa, this is not good."
Right.
What does our exposure look like from an organization? And thankfully, I think if we take a look at organizationally, TSPs and the MSP space, we don't tend to sort of directly interact with that venture capital ecosystem. So we don't all have that sort of concentration risk. And
Hmm.
concentration risk is the key. And I think if we take a look at what that means to TSPs, it's like, even from a practical point of view, do you have all of your revenue tied up with one account?
Right.
There's a great example. What happens if they leave? You got 10
Right.
staff, and you pay
So
them.
you're looking at diversification when you have this conversation
Absolutely.
first. Yeah, like so, and let's not, a few things that you said I want to unpack first. Going back to SVB first off, yes, they were the jewel of what SaaS lending was consisted of, right? They are the and I and I have we've been in space for a long time, and as we're working with SaaS companies, one of the hardest things for SaaS companies back in the day was getting the funding necessary because they couldn't make banks understand what they did for a living because banks traditionally were brick and mortar banks, brick and mortar businesses. That's what it was, right? And then this whole SaaS concept, software digitalization and whatnot, cloud-based became struggling for them. So that bank actually was able to, it understood what they were doing. So the business plan was different, right? So I mean, immediately I heard rumblings on, with this happening, what's this going to mean to SaaS-based companies? Are they going to struggle? So far, not one person that I know, one company I know has had any kind of struggle with this, which is good. That's good for the MSPs because they wonder. They're like, hey, how is this going to affect us? There's been nowhere on the street that I've heard of anybody having a struggle as far as any of the partners within the vendors within our marketplace, which is
Absolutely.
that's
And
plus,
I
that's a strength.
and I think this became something that potentially we avoided the missile that was shot into that particular situation. And the
Yes.
reason for that was because without that, the FDIC stepping in and actually securing all deposits, America-wide for all banks that are guaranteed. Now, that's an open check. I think it's $7.6 trillion of deposits need to be guaranteed now, not the limited 250,000 US dollar
Hmm.
deposit account. If that hadn't have happened, we would be sitting here talking about the knock-on effects. The conversations that I heard and anecdotally were aware of, it's like we're not going to make payroll. Like we can't, we don't
Right.
have any money whatsoever in our accounts. $250,000 isn't going to cut payroll. You run it,
Right.
you understand what that looks like. Like, payroll's massive, $250,000. Sorry guys, I can give you like half of what I owe you until we figure out what we're going to do
and
on Monday. Like
and
that's
here's my
the
IOU
reality.
slip. Here's my IOU slip. I owe you a back rub. So okay. So since we avoided it, which is good that we're not having this problem, what would you suggest for future for start with MSPs? Like what should they be doing? We're talking about diversification of things. So how should they approach this?
Well, I think there's like number one, concentration risk in accounts, in vendors, even in your own banking situation as well. You've got to look at it as a classic diversification. Don't have everything in one place. Have it spread across, like look at industry specifically as well. If you've got
Hmm.
concentration on an industry, if you're only doing dentistry is a great example. We've got a number of great clients that have specific dentistry practices, but they've diversified into other spaces as well to secure up revenue that isn't limited only to that industry. If an industry that has a primary focus in your business changes because of regulation, because of just generally what can happen there is industries can grow, and then create their own turmoil through inefficiencies that they create. You just got to have that balance, and balance is important in account concentration, but also in how you manage cash flow in your business.
Absolutely. So now when you're managing cash flow and your diversification, and I mean there's multiple factors, right? We know MSPs that may have one customer, two customers, and they have most of their business coming out of that, right? So I mean, one obvious answer is go find more clients. That's easy. I mean, it's not easy to find them maybe, but it's an easy thing to mention. But now when it comes to being able to have multiple accounts that you're receiving money into, right, which is giving diversification in accounts, there's not many platforms out there. There's not a lot of products. If you're taking payments, how you're taking payments and where it's going to, is there the ability to actually have a one-to-many approach where payments come in and go to certain accounts, or how's that look?
Well, it could even be a situation where you've got payments that flow through accounts and
Mm,
you spread that risk out. Now it's less of an issue. Last Friday, it was a bigger issue because SVB and the deposit account limitations were 250,000. Now, there is a less of a risk there, but understanding that in your case, and certainly in the TSP space, is that what we looked at, we were asked what's ConnectWise's exposure. Wise-Pay obviously is a payment platform. It
mhm.
provides payments through to thousands of MSPs. Like what does this actually mean for those businesses? And by analyzing the information that we had available to us, we're able to identify what level of interactions we have with SVB through routing numbers. So we're able to look at the routing numbers and see, well, what sort of transactions are flowing through those routing numbers. And the answer was very limited. So there was a limited exposure. And that just meant that we didn't have to worry about the potential risk associated with chargebacks and declines of those payments that are in flight at the moment. And I think that's a key piece for us, is that when we're looking at the systems that we have, the most important thing is to not have extended terms with your customers, because the moment that you extend past 7, 14, 30 days at most, you then put yourself at risk of changes in economic circumstance that ultimately you've already worn the risk of the services you've provided, the goods that you've sold, the SaaS products that have already been delivered. You have that responsibility to your vendors to pay for the services and products that you've procured. But on the other side of that, you've given your customers 15, 30, 60, 90 days.
Right.
And that risk in itself, in accounts receivable risk, is then it basically is amplified in these situations where the potential of collection is then even greater. You've got less of an opportunity to get that money from your customers. So
Sure.
keeping that shorter means that there's less rope. We
Right.
don't want to give them too much rope. We want to make it easier for you to get that money up front.
Well, and that makes sense. So, I learned a long time ago to, you know, onboard and train your customers the way to do business with you. That's the most simplest,
Absolutely.
right? So, to your point, that anytime you're extending out past collection dates, it makes it difficult to collect. We know that, but also it's just a ripple effect that it creates as well. Back to the whole thing, like we don't have money to pay you your paycheck. We don't have this. We don't, and that's a very real problem, and especially in small to medium sized businesses in the MSP space. So I can see that being a value, but then take it to the next level when you think about this, and that we know once I train my customers to be on a certain schedule, just like you pay your credit card payment or you pay your Wi-Fi bill, it's for me, everything's automatically taken out. I don't even look at things like I get my letters from the for water bill and gas company. I don't look at them, they're being paid.
Absolutely. And I think you just hit the nail on the head with, as you want people to do business with you, lead with that.
Yep.
And often we'll see, we do, I can't even tell you the numbers off the top of my head, but there's millions and millions of dollars of automatic payments processed through our platform every month, tens of millions of dollars.
Yep.
But the point of that is one thing: those businesses have created an opportunity for those customers to pay them through that decision that they've made. And often
Hmm.
we have new companies that come on board and say, "Oh, my customers would never pay by automatic payment because they want to send a check, they want to do this
Right.
manually, they want to make they want to do business in this way." And I've been there and I've done that myself. And my come to Christ moment was when I was like, I can't pay payroll if I don't get paid. That's the number one principle that applies in this situation.
Absolutely.
And when I changed my mindset and said, you know what, I'm actually not going to allow businesses to put me in that position anymore. Every new account that I sign up from today is going to go on this automatic payment, or what we call direct debit here in Australia. It's going to be automatically direct debited on the first of the month
Hmm.
with 0 days from the service delivery date. First of the month invoice, first of the month
Hmm.
debit, bank. The money is in my bank on the third of the month. And when I made that decision, when I changed that mindset, when I said this is the way that I'll do business, that was from that moment forward the way that my customers did business with me, because there was no option. When someone said to me, "Oh, well, can I just send you a check? Can I pay you on 14 days? That's our terms that we normally do business on." No, unfortunately, because I'm already paying for your Office 365, your Azure, your AWS, your internet connections, the services that we deliver to you, as a strategic partner in your business, just like payroll, we need to be paid on this date. And to facilitate that, we automate it. So you don't have to worry about it. Just
Right.
like your water bill or your electric bill, you don't want to worry about that. Imagine trying to get up in the morning and wash your hair. Like, come on, you're going to be like, you're going to be,
Wait, wash
like,
my hair. You
well,
know what, Paul?
you know what I
Thanks,
was doing
buddy.
there.
You
I
know
was
what?
doing that. Yeah, you're going to have a
The water
beautiful
was
beard.
cold today. I had to struggle with it today. Look, it's a bad hair day, man. Thanks for
Well,
noticing.
I was looking at that beautiful, luscious beard.
Thank,
That's luscious.
great recovery. I love it. Thank you. Can you call me later and do it again? Let me know how awesome it is.
No, I appreciate that. And that's where it is. Like, it comes back to one, understanding the problem, understanding the risk, and more importantly, building processes in your business around how to protect yourself from it. You can't protect yourself from a bank collapse. Like,
No.
the reality of the situation is, we were just lucky in this situation that the American government stepped in and protected the depository of SVB, that to stop that contagion, to stop that run effect onto other banks, because
Right.
immediately we would have just seen it would have been GFC V2. Like, that's exactly how it started, and that's exactly how it would have ended if they hadn't have stepped in and made that decisive move. Now we know that they could have shored up and potentially, got themselves out of the hole, but the reality of it was people's that emotional connection and the run
Mhm.
on the bank would have meant that it would have continued to happen, even if they had have tried to contain it in other ways.
Sure.
By stepping in and saying, guys, don't worry about it, your deposits are good. Wherever
Yep.
they are, they're good. You don't need to get your money out. They pretty much stopped it dead in its tracks, because that's what would have kept that momentum moving. And for us here is looking at it and saying, how do we actually protect our business by having diversification, understanding the risks, and more importantly, maintaining cash flow? And that's where I think it's important to recognize that.
I would agree. I mean, I think the cash flow conversation at large is one of the single-handed the most important conversations you hear with small businesses, right? Um, and we've touched lots of points between training the customer, having them automate the payments, having all these things done, structure the payments in a way where you know you have the money to pay payroll. It's a huge ordeal. I think that, I don't know, in Australia, I'm sure you guys probably have this, but here we have like our Christmas card bank account or our Christmas bank account, right? Where you can like literally start to siphon money from one to the other. And almost that almost makes sense in this kind of case, right? If you ever have that concern that one bank might go, have it go to another bank. So you're basically structuring that. So starting from the customer side, you're saying give the customer what they need to understand how to work with you and make payments easily. Get the money you need. Do upfront expectations on it. What it cost now, and then obviously distribute your money accordingly to wherever you want to protect yourself to maintain that the ability to have diversification. Now the question though comes to, and MSPs have this question often, is like, how should they charge? Should they be doing a monthly rate? Should they be asking for project work up front? Should they be doing those things? And if so, does that change the way payments take place?
Absolutely. And when I come back to, again, the concepts of services that you provide, and I say this time and time again, you've been there where I've promoted it. Don't be your customer's bank anyway. Like, you're a service provider. You're not there to fund their cash flow. You need to maintain and protect yours.
Yep.
I come from a long line of accounting background. My brother is an insolvency accountant, leads an insolvency firm here in Australia. And, I can see firsthand that businesses that fail, if it isn't fraud, it's cash flow. And
Yep.
number one impact is cash flow. Businesses, even with SVB, the thing that drove them to, ultimately appoint administration and to protect the business so it didn't end up combusting on the spot is to shore up its cash flow. And the appointment of administrators basically protects that one thing. What is left, and how can we protect it for the benefit of the investors, to the benefit of the creditors, and more importantly, to make sure that it can sustain from this point forward. And obviously, the bankruptcy laws in America are very different than what they are here in Australia and in different
Hmm.
parts of the world. But the reality of that reconstruction of organizations in that situation is to preserve and protect, to allow that business to restart again, to kind of, you stalled the car, you're in the middle
Yep.
of the highway. It's the ability for that, the AAA club to come and protect you and say, we'll get you going again, and push start and off you go. It doesn't happen like that anymore, especially if you're driving a Tesla. But the
Right.
reality of the situation is it's about how you protect cash flow. And the number one thing beyond payments, well, actually it is payments. So regardless, that's the number one thing. But what you can do throughout that journey is think about at every touch point. When we built WiseSync and WisePay, it was about accounting efficiency,
Hmm.
payment automation, those two things.
Yep.
Accounting efficiency to provide visibility to me as the business owner to know what was happening. I was on desktop. It felt like I was using tablet and chisel to try and get my financial accounts out of my bookkeeper on a monthly basis. I'm
Hmm.
45 days late, for Pete's sake. Like, it was so difficult to get information that I could make decisions on. We
Hmm.
wrote the integration to give that visibility. We wrote the payment integration to create protection around cash flow.
Yep.
And when we built the integration, I had a very simple philosophy. All roads lead to Rome. Every interaction, every integration that we wrote always came back to the one place. Whether it's the integration with CPQ, Cell, or if you're familiar with Quosal back in the
Hmm.
day, rolling forward through the various
Oh
different
yeah.
names.
Oh yeah.
CPQ, that experience now is simple. Pay and approve. They click a button in CPQ, it goes straight into Wise-Pay. Up comes the information that they need to pay, save a bank account, save a credit card for recurring, pay the amount up front. And we see businesses that implement that and start saying, well, you want this computer, you want this hardware, you want this implementation service. You're paying a proportion, if not all of it, up front. Because your hardware, you've got to pay for. You're not
Hmm.
Dell, you don't have, tens of millions of dollars worth of inventory that you can just ship at will. You got to
Right.
buy it and you've got to deliver it. And that's where I think having the ability and having the systems that can do that for you in a seamless and systemized way, saves you time, creates efficiency, and in business, those two things drive profit.
I couldn't agree more. I think that a couple of things that you touched on when and you said the first important thing is payment, right? But then you went down you ran the gamut of all the different pieces built into a CPQ, right? So when it comes back to training customers, back to how you should work with them and create less friction is easy way to quote, easy way to invoice, easy way to collect, automate as much as possible, increase velocity on the things you do with them. That way you can get moving right away, right? That's important. Get them in the door, right?
Absolutely.
Get them in the door. Don't get stuck on what should be the simple pieces because you have a lot of hard work ahead of you by providing a service you're providing to the client.
Actually doing what you need to do, right? That's before
Exactly.
you
Like
even get started delivering the service.
it should be as easy as you buying from Amazon.
I think the salient point in that is friction free. Like it has to
Hmm.
be easy. It just has to be simple in a way that it works. And again, even trying to set up your energy bill or your water bill or whatever it is, the services that you procure for your home,
Hmm.
having the portals that you have to log into, like even some of them you have to fill out a form and fax it through or email it into a mailbox so someone can type it into the computer because they don't have those capacities to be able to accept that payment electronically in a
Sure.
secure and efficient way. And that's where I think, again, coming back to friction free is one of the things that actually the principal tenets of the ConnectWise BMS suite is that we want to make the experience across all of our products friction free. So we're challenged as a business unit of ConnectWise, WiseSync and
Hmm.
WisePay to make sure that that experience and that delivery is ultimately delivering on what our customers want from us, just to make it simple. And that's where things like a great example is having the ability to put onto your invoice email template in ConnectWise Manage or ConnectWise PSA now, the ability to click to pay, and there's no login required. They click to
Hmm.
pay, they can type their credit card in, they can make a payment, you can pass on the surcharge if you want to. Really easy, really simple to understand. If they want to save their card or pay by bank account, they can register on the spot, which creates a payer in our system, links them to the company that they're paying it for, which then means that they can go about doing what they need to do without having to pick up the phone, send an email, log a ticket to say, can I get access to your customer portal because I can't get in there. My
Right.
password's has expired. I'm trying everything. It's not working. They've got the ability to make that payment just by simply clicking the button. And with the launch of Wise-Pay for PSA, and this isn't a product promotion, but I'm just kind of trying to
No,
fulfill.
I think it's important to talk about a couple of those things because one thing that we know these MSPs are looking to do is figure out how to make things simpler and how to, it's important to get to their, stop working in their business and work on their business, right? And this is one of the biggest barriers for them to do that. It's a huge obstacle. And the other thing that you were saying too, just to unpack one more thing, is we talked about frictionless, right, for the end users, but also frictionless for the MSPs themselves, because back to that one single source of truth, you said you struggle getting numbers from accounting. You struggle understanding what money's there and what isn't there. Have you made, so having the ability to have a one-stop shop to go in and find your stuff, your information, to know what you're doing, because again, as a business owner, you're trying to forecast and you're trying to invest and you're trying to make all those decisions based off of the here and now and the futures, right? And if you don't have access right away, and I've been part of this. I've been involved where I didn't know what the revenue was like. I'm like trying to figure it out. I used other platforms, billing platforms in a different industry that I couldn't run reports to see, how much were we really getting in and how much we should have gotten in, because there's a difference between booked business and realized revenue, right?
Oh,
There's a
absolutely.
big, like I booked $1 billion, but you only realized 1 million, right? And that's a big conversation. And again, I think that's something. Take away the product. And you're right. This is not a product pitch by any means. I think it's more about just talking about best practice. What should people be doing? If they're not talking to you guys, they should, if they're not talking to WiseSync and not talking to ConnectWise, they should be talking to somebody and looking at products and people to support products that makes sense to do what they want to do, which is a big part is payments, is financial.
It's funny because here we are talking about ultimately a cash flow calamity which impacted one of the larger banks, not the largest banks in
Hmm.
America, but certainly in their area and industry and that sort of niche that they operate within. The thing that's most interesting is that in February we launched Wise Pay for PSA. and that was the advent of one simple thing to make it available, or payments available for everyone inside of the ConnectWise ecosystem, not just limited to those that are using the
Hmm.
ConnectWise to QuickBooks Online or to Xero integrations through WiseSync, but to be able to say if you're on the PSA and you've got the Wise-Pay for sorry, you've got the need for payments, we've launched this product that is actually free. We're offering it at no
Hmm.
cost today because we see that in these economic turmoils, we have to provide something that helps our partners to protect their business.
Yep.
And it's almost an insurance policy to say, because on our perspective, there was investment, there was cost, there was effort that went into building that product and launching it. But we know the reality of that situation is we help you as a partner protect your cash flow. You stay in business. It protects us. It's that
Yes.
symbiotic relationship, as simple as that sounds. It's like, well, actually, this is the most important thing we could do for our partners during economic uncertainty, is make sure they've got the tools to drive efficiency for cash flow.
Hmm.
And when talking with the executive and the board and our, obviously leadership group, it was a bit foreign because they were like, well, we need to charge for it. Like it's a modular. I'm like, guys, this is about protecting them because they're buying secure, they're buying control, they're buying UMM, they're buying all of these features and functions from us. Let's protect that so that they have the ability to maintain their business on our platform. That's more important than trying
Hmm.
to get $20 a month from partnership. And I think that's something that's really resonated now, is that the sales team are like, man, I can go out and I can talk to people about something that helps them, that
Right.
helps their business. And more importantly, I don't have to say, hey, you need to give me more money, because it's just a matter of getting set up and getting that process started. So there's a link there that's been added. You can jump online, register on our website, and one of the team will be able to reach out and talk to you about that. Obviously, it's very simple. It's click to pay, simple merchant services. You click, you can take credit card and bank account.
Sure.
None of the automation that we're talking about, that's available through WiseSync and WisePay, but that's something we can do.
No, I like that. But I also like, for years, I've always believed that we all rise together, right? I think we all do. We all know that, right? So if you can add an element, again, not a purchase product or anything, if you can do anything to help people with their business, again, if you solve a problem for them and they're growing, more than likely, if MSPs grow and they like us, they like you, they're going to buy more product. They're going to sell more licenses. They're going to buy more seats, more endpoints. Take your pick, whatever company you are, whether it's ConnectWise or it's any one of our vendors in the marketplace, right? They're all going to reap the benefit. You're going to reap the benefit as an MSP. I think the one thing that I know that I've seen be a struggle point for many years for most of these guys was the operations behind it, that back office. And right now, and I just had this conversation. I'm at the ASCII Edge event right now in Atlanta. I just had this conversation with two vendors, smaller vendors, and they were talking about just the back office, how they make things function and scale. Repeatable scalability pieces are a difficult thing for most small businesses because they get caught in a rigmarole, and we know money is a rigmarole. It almost becomes a death trap, right? And once you have that problem, you have a hard time getting out of it. And it's the operations. It's that back office operation support. How do you automate as much as you can, and how do you make it as transparent as possible?
I think the key is automation. Automate, automate, automate. That's the reality of every
Everything,
part of
yes.
our business, right? But
Hmm.
the simplicity of what we see and how we approach it as well, thinking about the problems that we solve,
Yep.
has been around how do we get the best financial visibility with the least amount of effort. And
Absolutely.
yeah, I'm biased in the sense that, okay, now WiseSync is owned by ConnectWise, but I've always been biased because we've always used ConnectWise in our own
Hmm.
business.
Right.
And when I went and looked at other vendors in the marketplace, I always came back to, the discipline and the frameworks inside of ConnectWise. You can tell Arnie and David are CPAs. When they first built
Hmm.
ConnectWise, they built it with a view of the financial frameworks that billing and invoicing and agreements is really driven by the foundations of accounting. And if you have something that has those foundations, it's not an afterthought into billing. It's not an afterthought into how you generate revenue from the services that you provided. It's foundationary to that. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's where the BMS product suite now really enhances that overarching. You've got Bright Gauge, you've got Smileback, you've got BMS, you've got CPQ. So you've got all of those
Mm-hmm.
products now wrapped up in one nice little package that's designed to help you as the MSP or TSP go to market with what you actually do and sell. And more importantly, efficiency is what ultimately is your goal, because we're all selling the same services. It's
Agreed.
how we deliver them, the customer experience, your efficiency in delivering that service, the smile that customers have when they know that they need to log a support ticket because you're responsive, not
Mm-hmm.
unresponsive. These are all the things that I think are critical for businesses to succeed. But none of that matters if you don't have cash flow.
Agreed. Well, yeah, not it's your bloodline, right? So we know cash flow is the bloodline. We know it supports the initiatives. It pays the bills. Period, right? The other part is we know that, and from what you just said is it comes down to business continuity. Business continuity for the MSP, business continuity for your client. If one that you can't have one without the other. You have to support it supports each other, right? And that comes back full circle comes back to cash flow if you do it right. And something you just highlighted which is a good talk point people should think about. You're right. Automate, automate, automate. We know that part, right? But like when you said about client success, how do you determine how do you make sure your clients are successful? Well, you take away the mundane tasks that you shouldn't have to worry about. Things you shouldn't be thinking about and working on, those admin tasks that are actually mundane admin tasks that are automated will be out of your system, and you should be focusing on dealing with the relationship. Relationship to relationship is important. And I think a lot of people lose that because they're so stuck in doing everything. And I'm not an accountant. I'm not a finance guy. If I had to do all that, I would literally, well, I would, can't say I'd lose my hair because it's gone, but I would really have a problem. And most of these, I don't know many MSPs are finance guys or
Yeah,
sales guys. They're not built, they're tech guys.
good tech, good at tech, and I think that's where we all started from. I think the
Hmm.
um, the salient point that comes back to here is that the things that you're not good at is to make sure that you've got the right tools and technologies in to support those the outputs. It's measure and respond. The understanding what is actually happening is only possible when you actually have the ability to measure it. And
Yep.
simple measurements inside of finance, like if you're a tech guy and you don't understand accounting, there's no excuse for you not to know the core metrics that you need to measure your business on. If you're in business, you need to understand enough to be able to say, I'm the captain of my vessel, and I'm guiding through these treacherous waters to safety. And the reality of that
Hmm.
situation is that if you don't know what those measurements are, days sales outstanding or accounts receivable days at minimum, these
Yep.
things are the things that will derail or sink you. The reality of the situation is that we must have focus on areas that we're not actually good at as tech people, and we need to put
Hmm.
in place the processes that support it and the systems that enable it. And that's where, if I come back to
Yep.
even what we did by building WiseSync and WisePay, we solved a problem that was rooted in the inability to actually have the visibility of financials in our business. To not know where we were 45 days after the month had passed meant we couldn't make decisions today for things that we had done 45 days or more ago. And the
Right.
reality of that was that's where the problem really stemmed from.
Which makes sense. That's probably we at some point should dig into the history of this, of you all and how you got there really, because I think that's a real practical solution and use case that we can actually that people it'd be a good teachable moment for many people. Again, all the MSPs that I know, and I'm on all the MSP groups, the communities, I see when they ask questions about how to take payments, how to do processing, where to go, and again, because well, when you're on social media, it could be anybody answering the question. That's the one problem. That's the one scary piece, right? But nobody ever thinks about how to align all the elements that you need for this part. Like I know some people say, yeah, well, use Stripe. Okay, great. But then how do you do invoicing? Is it the same thing? Does it integrate? You know? Um, but yeah, so we want to get this wrapped up because I know people want to get back to their day. I know you, well, I mean, it's 5 in the morning. I'm sure you want to get coffee. So Are there any parting words or any information you think that's pertinent right now that people should understand?
Just because it's cheap doesn't mean it's good, is that simple. We often see people say, oh, I can get a better rate through Stripe, but you don't get the automation. You don't get the one platform to deliver those
Hmm.
services to. We're not the cheapest, but what you get is the best. And that's, I think, the difference between, one of the key tenets is that, the cheap, the good, and the fast. Like we
Yep.
actually can get to that sweet spot in the middle by delivering better, more capable platforms that give you the efficiency that creates savings in exponential value beyond what you actually pay for those services. So if you're not sure about what WiseSync and Wise-Pay does, jump onto the website, fill out the form, reach out to your account manager if you're a ConnectWise
Hmm.
partner today, because they can talk to you about WisePay for PSA, which is that free product that we spoke about. It is free for a limited time, so you've got until the end of the month to take us up on that offer. But the reality of that is it's a great product that's available for you today.
Yep. No, I appreciate that. I like that. I think the takeaway from me from all this is we already mentioned the diversification. We already talked about those things. So basic business banking practices to maintain your cash, right? So you don't lose, you're not concerned, right? Like just like the Christmas bank account, right? But on the other side of things, though, I think it comes back to the business continuity exists because you're talking about a holistic offering. No matter who you go with, whether it's with you, with us here, or somebody else, if you can't find a way to integrate and automate, then you're going to find yourself doing a lot of that work or hiring somebody at a premium that has to do the work for you.
Yep.
Either way, you're spending the money.
Human capital never solves problems. Find
Mm-mm.
solutions in technology. Chat
Yep.
GPT. Look at what that's done to revolutionize
We get
the industry. But it's simple in that context because it actually solves a problem. Like you can go in and ask it a question and get something of relevance. May not be exactly what you're after, but you can then finesse that. It just saves you 5 minutes of typing out a job description. We run
hmm
EOS in our business, and I know we're going to wrap up, and we're now off track. But I've heard of people that have set rocks in their quarterly planning to rewrite all the job descriptions, and they've come out of the session an hour later, they've finished that rock because they've used that tool to create the baseline of their job descriptions, and they've just reworked it to match it. Like, how long do you sit there and try to figure that stuff out? If you're,
Right.
if you're trying to build a team, it's difficult to think like that.
Well,
Use
absolutely.
tools.
Well, absolutely. And actually, in full circle, and we'll wrap up, is that exactly what you just explained is exactly what you should be doing when you think about the processes in your business and you're looking at technology to support it. We know that it goes process and people and technology, right? So you build the process, you find the technology to support your process. They should all interlink, and you put the people in that actually you need to support at the end. That way, you're not overspending on things that aren't necessary. This technology does
Absolutely.
provide a lot of work. So, appreciate that, Paul. Anybody that watched this, or we will keep this. This will be recorded. This is recorded. I believe we'll be hosting on some of your other places. We'll put it out later on social. So please feel free to check it out. If you guys want to reach out to any one of us, we're easy to find. We're all over social media also. Take advantage of the link. You have a week and a half for the free pay product. So you might, if you have a chance to use it, use it. It's
Absolutely.
freaking free. If you have any questions, by all means, schedule time. Talk to your account manager. I think that's all we have for today, right?
Absolutely. Thanks again, Sean. Really appreciate it. I know you're out there at ASCII and 5:46 a.m. here, so it's
I
good
know.
start today. See tomorrow out, and welcome today all at once.
Absolutely. Thanks, Paul. Thanks, everybody, for watching. Look forward to seeing you all again.
Thanks again.